Beginning in February and March 1942, Japanese families living on the West Coast were given the option to voluntarily move east. Though this option was called voluntary evacuation, it was expected that all people of Japanese ancestry would be leaving the West Coast in a very short time. Out of the thousands of people of Japanese ancestry living on Washington's West Coast, 200 voluntarily evacuated to Spokane, Moses Lake, Pullman, and other areas of eastern Washington.
The government said if you had any relatives or if you had means of subsistence, as long as you weren't dependent on the government for your board and room and subsistence and so on, we were able to move east of the mountains. We decided to go to Spokane.
Well, we all evacuated together because my oldest sister was ill. We didn't know what the future was. Where are we going? No one knew. How long are we going to be gone? No one knew the answer to that. Not knowing, my parents decided, well, if there's a possibility of evacuating voluntarily, we better take it for the sake of my sister.
Because they had only a few days to move, Japanese families sold their businesses, homes, and belongings for any price offered. Most people only received a fraction of what their possessions were worth, and left behind family heirlooms that were lost forever.
We just have 48 hours. You just get rid of your business, you do the best you can. Discard everything. When people talk about pictures from years back, we don't have any.
Some people were fortunate to have good neighbors who helped them move or store their belongings.
We had a deadline. We only had, I think, as I recall, 3 days to move. Fortunately, our neighbor across the street, they came over and said, just leave everything there. Don't have to pack anything. Later, after we left, they would pack everything up and move it for us. Put it in their truck and send it over to Spokane. So all we did was to take whatever we could in the car. That's how we left Seattle.
Some Japanese had relatives living inland who were able to offer their homes as refuge.
It's my father's brother that had the farm in Spokane as to where we moved. I have another uncle. My father's older brother was here with his family. So both families moved to the farm with my uncle in Spokane. So that was the only reason we were able to move. Otherwise, there was no choice for us but to go to internment camp. Both families left in their family car and loaded up as much as they could take, and we moved to the farm. And my uncle there took us in.
We left everything. We're just fortunate that my other uncle lived in Spokane. He had a farm. And so we all evacuated to his farm and stayed there until we got established over here.
Some young Nisei also voluntarily evacuated on their own without their families and without any promise of safety in the places they moved to. Listen as one woman remembers coming to Spokane by herself in 1942.
But it was scary when I first came here because when I got off the train, I didn't know where to go. So I took a cab and asked the cabbie to take me to some nice Japanese hotel. They drove around and around and went back to the one on Skid Row. And I took a room, put my bag in the room, and they went downstairs. And I went down there and went up to the hotels, and there was a girl I knew. So she called some of my friends, and they immediately came and picked me up.
Fortunately, this woman had friends in the Spokane Japanese community who took her in and helped her get started. These were friends she had met in Seattle when church groups came to stay at her father's hotel.
She greeted me, and she found out that I had taken a room at the hotel. She said she wouldn't even let me go down. She gave the boys the keys and said, check her out and bring her bag. She said, you could stay with us. And I think she was sort of ostracized because she had taken me in. You know, people thought that maybe the FBI's checking on me. Why are they taking me in. And
College students from the University of Washington in Seattle, who were able to transfer to a school inland, also braved the unknown and traveled to their new schools with no family to support them.
when this thing happened that we knew we had to leave, the Dean of Women called me to her office and told me, you know, don't feel bad and it'll turn out better. And she says, and keep a record of everything that happens. Keep a diary. I said to myself, my whole world's coming apart and she's asking me to keep a diary.
Although some inland Northwest universities accepted Nisei transfer students easily, there were also problems with quota systems and communities suspicious of Japanese people. One organization, the National Japanese American Student Relocation Council, devoted itself to finding colleges and universities for Nisei to attend. Listen as these Nisei remember the difficult journey from the University of Washington in Seattle to the University of Idaho in Moscow, and finally to Washington State College in Pullman.
We were supposed to go to Idaho originally, and they were looking for some students, so my sister heard about it, and then I says, well, let's go, and then got some money from my father. He didn't have much. He says, well, this is all I can give you guys, and so we went. There were 6 of us. We left on April 13th, 1942. We were assigned different families to stay with. I was with a family, Floyd Trail, and they were living outside of town.
Only 3 or 4 of us were going to go to school at the University of Idaho, but they thought a whole slew of us were coming, and some people were against any of us coming.
But I know the 2 gals had spent a night in jail for protection because the town folks were threatening they were going to get rid of those guys. I don't know what happened. University of Idaho wouldn't enroll us, so we moved over to Pullman.
But voluntary evacuation became more of a problem than a solution. Only a few hundred people of Japanese ancestry volunteered to leave the West Coast. This left several thousand people on the coast who were deemed a national security risk. In addition, inland communities like Moscow, Idaho, feared their towns would be overrun with Japanese. In order to quicken the evacuation process and squelch hysteria, the American government decided to begin forcibly evacuating people of Japanese ancestry to assembly centers and internment camps.